Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a look at a really profound philosophical framework. It's one that maps out the journey from life's harshest, absolute coldest winters all the way to a vibrant, colorful season of development. So, if you're ready to explore how shifting your perspective can literally alter your reality, let's just jump right in. You know, take a second right now and just reflect on your own periods of hardship. We've all been there, right? It feels incredibly isolating, it feels bitter, and honestly, it usually feels like it's just never going to end. But what if that feeling of being permanently stuck is actually just a complete misunderstanding of how the seasons of personal growth actually work? To answer that, we're drawing directly from Chapter 5 of Ryuho Okawa's The Origin of Happiness. We're going to break down a section beautifully titled Spring in Full Bloom, and the author lays this out through 5 key themes: the breath of spring, a time for patience, the torrent of life, towards development, and finally, proof of limitless wisdom. We're going to map this all out so you can easily grab hold of the core mechanics here. All right, part 1, the season of endurance and the arrival of spring. Okay, let's dive into this. The central idea here is that life inevitably has this necessary season of endurance. The text argues that the harsh winter is literally just preparation for what it calls the breath of spring. So human suffering isn't permanent. It's more like a dormant phase meant to point us towards development, making that coming growth so much more impactful. Think of it kind of like a coiled spring. The freezing cold and the pressure, they aren't there to break you. They're actually there to force you to gather your energy so you can eventually launch forward. So why do we let ourselves suffer so intensely? Well, the source material points directly to something it calls the Trinity of Doubt as the root cause of our prolonged misery. And those are a lack of trust in yourself, a lack of trust in others, and a lack of trust in the divine, or God. When these 3 vital elements are missing, we basically become completely consumed by our everyday problems. We spend all of our energy just complaining about how cold it is outside, completely missing the deeper purpose of the season. And this brilliantly illustrates the huge disconnect between how we usually handle hardship versus what the text is actually advising us to do. Most people get completely trapped in their external environment, seeking validation, blaming other people, just desperately hoping someone will rescue them. But the text pushes for a radical shift to your internal environment. It's about storing true power and actively looking inside yourself. Because let's be real, you don't get warm by yelling at the winter sky, you get warm by quietly building a fire inside. Which brings us to what the text refers to as a time for patience. And I really want to slow down for a second and just reflect on this quote: like a tree stretching its buds under the winter snow, you must store power within. Just let that visual sink in for a moment. Even when everything looks totally dead and frozen and just hopeless on the surface, there's this incredible, quiet work happening underneath the snow. The buds are forming. The tree is gathering its strength. It's absolutely crucial to build that internal resilience during your hardest times, silently preparing for the thaw. And guys, when that thaw finally does come, it brings the breath of spring. The text says, the breath of spring is an encouragement to that which seeks to develop. This isn't just some passive change in the weather. The author describes the arrival of spring as a dynamic torrent of life. It's an active, high-energy reward for all your patience. It's like the universe is literally cheering on those who endured the winter and are finally ready to stretch out and bloom. It is just such a fantastic, energizing way to reframe the end of a really tough period. Moving right along to our next section, breaking the status quo. Now, enduring the winter is really only half the equation. Eventually, you gotta have the courage to break out of that stagnant state. And the author uses this striking, really unique metaphor for how we do this: the golden pipe, or ogon no paipu. According to the text, this inner connection is the proof of limitless wisdom that every single individual possesses. It's literally a conduit leading straight to boundless wisdom and divine energy. The whole philosophy here is that you are not just some isolated, helpless person. You are fundamentally plugged into an infinite source. You just have to know where to look. Okay, so the million-dollar question: how do we actually activate this connection? Well, the roadmap is pretty clear. First, you have to stop seeking answers from other people, and you have to stop waiting for your environment to magically change to make you happy. Doing that just keeps you trapped in the external world. Instead, you need to look deep into your own mind. That is where the actual connection is. By turning inward and trusting yourself, you open up the valve and you let that infinite wisdom flow. You tap into an endless reservoir of strength. And the promised result of this? It's profound.
The text says it's a single connection eliminating all fear and sorrow. According to the source material, once you discover and actually use this inner golden pipe, those feelings of isolation and fear, they just melt away. Why? Because you finally realize you are connected to a limitless source of energy. You aren't just floating around aimlessly, you are anchored deeply to infinite wisdom. So, I want to leave you with this ultimate, slightly provocative question. Are you ready to stop complaining about the cold and discover the boundless wisdom stored inside you? Think about how this shift, moving from external complaining to internal power, can apply to your own life right now. Because according to this philosophy, the power to bloom is entirely in your hands. Thank you so much for joining me today. Keep examining the world closely, keep building that internal fire, and I will catch you in our next explainer.